Hey everyone, it's Types, and today we're taking a look at cards from the Starter Decks Generations set, or just the starter decks from the recent Japanese releases. And there are a bunch of cards, and a lot of them are new, and a lot of them are really bad as well. So we're not taking a look at too many of them, but we're taking a look at the ones that have been played in Japanese City League tournaments recorded in the Limitless database. And there have been, I believe, 5 cards so far recorded in those tournaments, and some of them are pretty interesting. And so let's just hop into the different decks. And the first card we're going to take a look at is Lilligant here. Lillian is a Pokemon with an ability Sunny Day, which says attacks used by your grass and fire Pokemon do 20 more damage to your opponent's active Pokemon. And of course, Lillian is a stage 1, and it does have 2 retreats, so you'd rather have one, but whatever, that's not that big of a deal, hopefully. And so you have a solid damage buffs, and the list it has been played in. You could play this in different things. Fire and grass, they're two like kind of weak types, but I don't know. It is what it is, right? And presumably in the future, I expect this card to end up seeing pretty decent amounts of play in something at some point because this is solid damage buff. But we have Lillian, and it's been played within the only deck it's been played in so far is Dipplin Thwackey. Thwackey is the engine, right? But Dipplin here is the attacker with Festival lead, saying if Festival Grounds is in play, a stadium, then this Pokemon may use an attack it has twice, which is Do the Wave. That's the only attack you can copy. And then it says if the first attack knocks out, you can attack again, or you can attack in the same Pokemon twice if it's not knocked out. And this does 20 for each of your bench Pokemon. And you'll never be expanding your bench with this deck because, of course, you need Festival Grounds, so you can't be playing Area 0 Underdepths, but you're still able to do essentially 200 because you can do 100 with the full bench, and you double that up. But you can also use damage buffs within this deck, and you have Kieran to do 30 more to EXs and Vs, and then you have Lillian, which is just going to make you do 20 more all the time. Also, I said there was only 5 new cards. This doesn't count the previous evolutions like this Petalil. There's nothing really to say about it, but it is a new card. Um, I don't know. There's another one, but it's worse than no. There's 2 more, and they're both worse. Are they worse? It doesn't really matter. But anyways, you have this Lillian here, and then you're doing 20 more, but this actually like 40 more because you're attacking twice. And you also have like Maximum Belt, Vitality Band, Defiance Band, and 40 more is really good. 20 more is okay, but doing 40 more is really good. This deck isn't super great. It has inconsistencies. I've played it some. I imagine a lot of people watching this have probably played it or kind of like they know about it, and it's a pretty weird deck, but it is fun and it's kind of cool. Obviously, I haven't played with Lilligan because it's not out yet, but this is a cool use of it. Next, we have Blaziken EX, and this one's definitely the coolest with its HP of 320. It does have 2 retreats, a fire type stage 2, and fire type, as I said, is not very good in standard right now. You do have Charizard EX, which is a really good card, but it's only fire type energy, not fire type as a Pokemon, so that's not great for it. And the Charmanders and Charmeleons are fire, but I don't know, I feel like that doesn't really matter. But then you have the ability Boiling Fighting Spirit. These abilities are translated, so probably not the actual ability name, but certainly the same effect. And it says once during your turn, you may attach a basic energy from your discard pile to one of your Pokemon, any of them. You have Burning Salt out for 200, fight. No, for Fire Carlos, it does 200 and can't attack next turn, but your ability is really good for powering it up. You can just attach an energy from hand and accelerate the other energy, and so it doesn't entirely pay for itself, but it kind of does. So that's pretty nice. And of course, you can use this to accelerate to anything as well. And we've seen 2 lists that play it, and they are this Blaziken EX deck with Slacking EX and also with Trap Ghost EX. And this is really interesting because Trap Ghost EX is certainly a very good card. I'm trying to look at the differences between these lists. I don't see any immediately. This one apparently plays one less Iono and plays an Arven and plays. This one plays one more Buddy Buddy Poffin as well. Well, this one plays I'm trying to figure out exactly what the differences are. It plays I don't know, there's some different like ball search counts and stuff like that. And this one does have counter catcher as well, but in pretty similar decks. Slacking EX is a really interesting Pokemon with its ability born to slack. I don't know, I didn't realize that was the ability name. But it cannot attack if your opponent doesn't have any EXs or Vs in play, but most people do. So most of the time you can attack. And then you have this attack here, which is 280 for 2 colorless, and you discard an energy from it. But that's pretty easy to get on anyways, but also you can use a Blaziken EX to get the energy on, or you can use Glass Trumpet And that'll, assuming you have a Terra in play, which will be Trapghost EX, and will accelerate uh, a basic energy to up to 2 of your bench colorless Pokemon, which is pretty nice. And then you have Trapghost EX here. In terms of energies, we have 2 fires and then 2 waters, 2 grasses, and 2 lightnings. You're probably not attacking with Radiant Greninja, but you can attack with Trapghost EX, either attack. You can also attack with Slacking EX. You can attack with Blaziken EX as well, which is really interesting as this like toolboxy deck. You even see the fun little 3 knockdown too, because you can get the basic much easier off of search cards, and you can also Hisuian and Heavy Ball for it. But that's pretty cool. You see Cyrano as well, which is an interesting supporter, saying you search your deck for 3 Pokemon EX and put them into your hand. Cyrano's a supporter that hasn't really seen that much play so far. I think it is a cool little supporter. Apparently, it's seen play in Goldengo, where it's like, okay, it's kind of like Airzu or Hyper Aroma. It's not the same as Airzu. Airzu wouldn't work. It's more or less the same as Hyper Aroma within that deck, but it's a supporter, but not an A-spec. And, we have moderate damage output, you have maximum build to add to it, and you have Morty's Conviction, drawing a bunch of cards based on bench Pokemon, and Area Zero Underdepths could mean they're drawing a ton of cards off of that. This other list, as I said, it's more or less the same. You have the same Pokemon, I believe, they're just in different order for whatever reason. And yeah, Blaziken EX is a pretty interesting card. It's probably the most interesting Pokemon from the set. I do think that the Lilligant is also pretty interesting. But Blaziken EX definitely a card that I've heard some talk about, and it's okay, and one that we'll probably end up seeing some in the medium. Slacking EX is also good. Or it's not that good, but it's okay. It's a playable EX. It's not a great EX, but it's playable and kind of fun. So interesting to see where this card is going to go in the future. Next up, we have Tapu Koko EX, and this is a card I talked about a little bit. I talked about, I think, most of these cards in a previous video. Tapu Koko EX I did talk about with its attack Thunder Connect, 60 to more for each of your bench Pokemon, and then it has Free Retreat, and it only has 200 HP on a basic, which is kind of low for a 2-prizer, but it's not that bad. But this is unsurprisingly played in Miraidon EX with like the Lightning Box style deck, I guess is kind of how I describe it. A lot of pretty normal stuff within this deck. Obviously some new things. You got the Magneton, you got Latias EX, you got Pikachu EX, but then you can expand your bench with Area Zero Underdepths, and currently in the standard format, you want to be playing Raikou V. It's a solid attacker for only 2 energies. It's your really only 2 energy attacker. You have Raichu V, but calling that a 2 energy attacker isn't really true. I mean, you can attack for 1 energy, but you can attack for 2 energy for 120. You can technically only have 2 on Raichu V and hit like really big damage, but you need more energies in play. So Raikou V is a really good 2 energy attacker, and Tapu Koko EX is pretty similar. It is going to be hitting 40 more, but it does not account for your opponent's bench Pokemon. So this will be hitting probably 20, 40, maybe 60 less damage. Sometime. Well, actually, no, I'm trying to think. If maybe just like 20 less damage on average, which isn't like that bad. Raikou V is solid with Air Zero Underdepths, and you can turn that on pretty easily with the Miraidon EX touching out your Tapu Koko EX and your Pikachu EX. Having Free Retreat's kind of cool as a pivot, though. Ultimately, you obviously have Latias EX and we see Mew EX, which is also a pivot, but being a pivot is good in the deck, and I think Tapu Koko EX is a really great inclusion in Miraidon EX. It's not super strong at really any particular area, though it is a pretty good single prize, not single prize, lower attack cost attacker within the deck, which the deck is really looking for, and it fills that role decently, especially with the rotation of Raikou V coming soon. And then you will lose the value of Forest Steel Stone, right? So obviously Raikou V is really good for that reason. It's the main Pokemon V in the deck, but I still think Tapu Koko EX will see play, and the fact that someone has chosen to play it and seen some amount of success, not necessarily a ton. I think it was 15th out of a 64-player tournament, which is like all right, but it's not super game breaking. It was single elimination presumably, but I think then single elimination means you have generally more rounds for the same amount of time, so it's actually a better sample size of how good a deck is if you're playing single elimination versus not single elimination, best of 1. I said the wrong thing. Yeah, best of 1's better than best of 3. Single elimination is not better in terms of finding how good something is, because you could just lose. But yeah, it's I think it's generally Swiss with best of 1. I'm not super familiar with tournament structure in general, to be honest, but Yeah, some people often like bring that up. It doesn't really matter that much though. Let's be honest. And also, most people are just playing best of one all the time, anyways, on like live and something like that. It's not an insane attacker, but it is one that is it's solid. It's definitely a solid card. And I didn't really talk about the set. It's like a lot of EXs because that's what the set's kind of focused around. There's two from every generation, and this is definitely one of the better ones. The best two are Blaziken EX and Tapu Koko EX. I don't know which one's better. Blaziken EX is more interesting, but Tapu Koko EX is more simply good in a proven deck. Then we have Toedscool. Toedscool's a Pokemon that is kind of surprising for me to see because it's the same as a Weavile, I think. Anyway, we'll get to that in just a moment. But its ability says if it's on your bench, your active Pokemon's root cost is two less, and that's pretty good. I was talking about Pokemon having a retreat cost of two being kind of bad. This does have a retreat cost of two, and so if you only have one of this Pokemon in play, and then it could get Boss and Gust trapped in the active. But this is similar to Weavile, I think. Might be Sneasler. These aren't in English. I think it's Sneasler. Yeah, so it's like a Hisuian Sneasler, which says as long as it's on your bench, it's the same ability. There might be other cards with the same ability. There Dodrio? Um, yeah, there's Dodrio with a similar ability. Is there Beware? Or maybe not. Okay, yeah, there was a Beware with a similar ability as well. I wasn't sure if they were like the same, and they are. So there have been a bunch of Pokemon with this ability, and they haven't really seen play. This card hasn't seen any play. The Beware, I don't think it's really seen play. There's limited data on older cards, but still, the Dodrio. Um, Yeah, has also it wouldn't see play here because of the even more limited data in terms of older stuff with the city leagues. But regardless, Toadschool had seen play by someone within this Goldengo Toadschool deck, which plays the Toadschool with Slime Mold Colony. Cards in your opponent's discard pile can't be recovered to their hand through the effects of abilities or trainers by your opponent. So that's kind of good. Or your opponent's trainers or abilities matters for Pokestop, but and this deck does play Pokestop, so your opponent can use your Pokestop, but not their Pokestop, which is I don't know. It's a thing. But anyways, then you have Goldengo EX with Energy Surge Pro. I've talked about this deck some, and definitely a deck that's been floating around. But Toadschool's an interesting inclusion here, as you can get increased value out of Goldengo EX consistently, because Goldengo EX's ability says if it's in the active, you draw two. Otherwise, if it's on your bench, you just draw one. So this is really interesting, allowing you to go ahead and get extra cards like every turn. Normally you could play like a switch to get some extra value there, or some other like switch like card like Professor Turf scenario or something like that, but that's burning a card just to draw an extra card, so you're not really getting that much value there. I have seen people play switches to do that, but it's just okay. It's kind of like the same thing as playing a tracking shoes. Arguably a little worse. It is a little worse though. With Goldengo EX, now you can get the value out of it every single turn, getting an extra card, because on the bench you are still drawing one card. This will get you an extra card every turn with Goldengo EX, or if you're not in the active in the first place, it allows you to actually attack, which could be really big. Ultimately, as I said earlier, this card could still get Gus trapped in the active, but this is a really interesting use of this card. We can get some additional value throughout the course of the game, which can win you the game, because Goldengo EX, this spell doesn't really have any engine. I mean, it kind of does. That's Goldengo EX. That's Radiant Green Engine, has Pheasant Dipty EX, and does play Lumineon V as well, which will help you out, but ultimately, Goldengo EX is just an okay engine on its own, and you got a little bit of support. It is generally enough to get by. Saying it doesn't have an engine, I guess, is not really correct, but it's not a full engine that'll be drawing you as many cards as like a bunch of Curlias, or you won't be seeing as many cards as a bunch of Dracloaks. So, and Dracloak's not even that good. Same thing with like Barrel, it's just a one card engine or maybe a two card engine, getting you a lot of cards. Goldengo, you need a bunch of Goldengo EXs in your Radiant Green Ninja and stuff to really keep you going, but this is another card to kind of help that out. And it's a really fun addition. And you have Toadschool is a really fun line, I think, with the Toadschool that stops recovering, the EX to kind of protect your Pokemon if you want that as well. And this new one, making this a more complete support evolution line, kind of like what I described like Milotic has. Milotic has a bunch of really interesting Pokemon in the standard format right now that aren't super great, but they're solid and they are seeing some play. Then we have the last card here, the supporter, and we're not going to take a look at all the lists with this card, but it's Black Belt's training, which has a bunch of prints because the set, I didn't show the whole set, but there's a bunch of prints of certain trainers. There's all the black belts. They all have a card from each generation, and all the researches. And I think all the boss's orders are also getting prints. But I don't know where that is. Maybe they're not. Maybe I was just like imagining that. But all the professor's researchers are in this set, and all the black belts trainings. This is the Japanese set. So the international set will be this plus some more stuff, but plus another, like, this isn't the main set. This is like the smaller portion of the set. But in terms of EXs, there's going to be presumably a bunch from the set in the set, and black belts training will probably be in the international set as well. This says during this turn, attacks used by your Pokemon do 40 more damage to your opponent's active Pokemon EX before weakness and resistance. This is pretty good. We looked at Kieran. We've taken a look at cards like Leon, Professor Kukui on the channel. Not that much. They're pretty old cards by now, but they are cards that added damage. Kieran isn't a... Kieran's okay. Kieran's definitely a fun card. I talk about it a lot, to be honest. It's a supporter. It allows you to hit 30 or more to your opponent's active EX or V. The EX or V thing doesn't matter that much. It'll matter right when this card comes out, but whatever. It's not... Well, I don't know actually how much it'll matter. It might matter a lot when the new block comes around. It's not rule box cards, but we'll see. And then you have Kieran, which also is a switch card, which is quite useful. It's a card that's seen a bunch of play. It's not a super strong card with like a ton of value, but it's a card that's seen a bunch of play in a bunch of different decks, and it's pretty solid. But Black Belt's training, an extra 10 is quite useful here. 40 is just really good. And so the Japanese tournament results, if you don't know, versus like the regular tournament results, Limitless kind of hand sorts through them, especially in the online ones, right? So if you look at the online metagame, you see that there's a deck called Other, which is played a lot. Then if you look at Pocket, you see that there is no Other deck, I'm pretty sure. And so then there's a bunch of different decks. There's 877 different decks, apparently, but that's kind of absurd. And like some of these are like what is Venusaur EX, Marowak EX? Like who's running? Is this even a regular tournament? I don't think it is. Anyways, so you got... What am I even looking at? I'm not actually sure what I'm looking at here, but this is an Articuno EX deck, I guess, with Mewtwo and Farfetch'd and Scyther. I don't know. I'm not exactly sure what the context of this is, but what's a more normal deck? Like maybe Psyduck. Someone went with this. Okay, I don't know. No, that's Little Legends. Oops, I accidentally shrunk the screen. There we go. It's back. Okay, well, maybe I should scroll up a little more to find a deck that's more normal. Like Greninja Pyukumuku. Is this an actual, like a regular format deck? I don't think it is. There's like certain alternate formats. Maybe I shouldn't have scrolled down to deck like 500. But you have there's so many decks, right? If you look at regular decks, like let's say you got Pikachu EX. Pikachu EX is obviously a deck that's highly played, but there's like so many builds of this deck. So Pikachu EX versus Pikachu EX Zebstrika versus Pikachu EX Raichu versus Pikachu EX Electrode versus Pikachu EX Zapdos. Like these aren't all different decks. That doesn't really make a lot of sense, but Limitless has done it kind of automatically, and that's what we see the Japanese tournament results. So then we see that if you look at the regular Pokemon TCG, there's only going to be like 100 and something decks, and there's a lot of other decks. But anyways, so this here is, there are no other decks. So this is deck called Luminion V, the Luminion V Terapagos. Luminion Terapagos. Those are the Pokemon, and it's Luminion V and Terapagos EX are those Pokemon, but also it's a cloth Terapagos deck. So just wanted to preface that by these decks that are like, what are all these like weird Terapagos decks? These are all Terapagos cloth, I'm pretty sure. Well, not all of them, but like Pekka, this is cloth. And I don't think there's any Pekka Luminion decks. That'd be like really hilarious if those are the Pokemon it shows. So that's just something to keep in mind. But anyways, you have this in the Pekka cloth deck, or the Cloth Terapagos deck. Trapper's EX deck, and with this deck, you're trying to look at lots of different damage outputs to potentially get knockouts with poison, because that's really powerful, stopping your opponent's Fezandipity EX, because Fezandipity EX says that it can only trigger once during a turn if any of your Pokemon were knocked out during your opponent's last turn. And your last turn, there's, obviously there's turns of Pokemon TCG, but then there's Pokemon checkup between turns when poison is implemented, which is referenced in Packer Run. It references Pokemon checkup in between turns, so you will end up taking the knockout there, hopefully, and then if you do that, you are able to go ahead and not trigger their Fezandipity EX, which is really, theoretically, really big, because this 3 cards swing on a turn could just be insane, and Black Belt's training allows you to hit the damage amount you want more so, and you have double turbo energy, but that's not really optional. You kind of need it on your Pokemon, but you can control things better. You could even hit with Cloth with a double turbo energy and not poison yourself in Black Belt's training. I don't know if you'd really ever choose to do that. It seems quite bad because you're hitting very little, but maybe you want to just hit like this low amount, but enough that you'll get the knockout with poison, with Radiant Hisuian Sneasel. You can't use Pecker in that situation, but you have different options, and it's definitely a cool card. That's not the only use case of it either. The deck can come up short on big knockouts. Oh, this list, I didn't even look at it that closely. It is not playing Hisuian Electrode V, which is really cool. I think Hisuian Electrode V is like pretty mediocre. Ultimately, you do lose out value on Force Seal Stone. You're relying more on your Lumineon Vs here, which is why those are showing up so much. I think we'll see. This list does play Hisuian Electrode V. I'm assuming a good chunk of do. Oh, it also plays Oranguru V to allow that to work, but in these different decks, you see different cards being played in them, and Black Belt's training kind of covers up for Hisuian Electrode V, which is ultimately a card that is kind of awkward to set up. Then we see it in Hydreigon EX. Hydreigon EX only hits 200. You can buff it with Binding Mochi, just like in the other deck, to hit 240, which is a good number. You could even buff this to 280 if you want, or just get 240 more consistently. So that's pretty cool there. And then you also see it in our Calodon, which is hitting 220. Again, you want to be hitting a little more, maybe 240, 260 isn't necessarily a super great number, but it's okay. Good names like Goldengo, EX, and it kind of replaces the Starmie, which is sometimes played in the deck as well. We see Palkia, Origin 4 Palkia V-Star. This is another deck where you're kind of doing this damage manipulation type thing with Area 0 underdepths, and your opponents are trying to play around that, and so they'll end up holding back maybe 2 Pokemon, and then that's 40 damage. You can replace that with Black Belt's training, and they can't just hold back all these Pokemon because they need to play some. And you just see it in a bit of a variety of decks, but more so decks that have these modular damage outputs, trying to hit like very specific numbers. Even something like United Wings, which is a deck where, again, you have a modular damage output based on your United Wings Pokemon in the discard. So overall, it's a really interesting supporter, and one that I am kind of looking forward to. Ultimately, it has a lot of overlap with Kieran. They're not the same, but they're similar, and I don't know if I necessarily love that. In terms of like big trainers in this set, these Star Deck generations, this is a cool new trainer. It's not like super crazy impactful, though. I do want to quickly take a look at Terrestrial Fest EX, which is the expansion that is the the main mini expansion. This is what a lot of the cards we're getting will be from, and there's a bunch of reprints here as well. But the interesting trainers we will be getting, this Larry's supporter, which is like a searching supporter, which is kind of sketchy, but it's kind of fun. This Amaris draw supporter, which I've talked about these some in the past. I'll talk about them in the future. There's a Dragon Berry, which is like the berries. It reduces dragon type damage. Then you have this A-Spec that searches for tools, and this A-Spec that recovers a bunch of Pokemon. This A-Spec's like super good, I think, and we'll see. It hasn't seen any play in Japan yet because I'm pretty sure it's not legal in tournaments, but I'm excited to see what those cards are going to do once we get a more full view of the expansion. But anyways, I hope you enjoyed the video. Consider liking, subscribing, hitting the bell, all that good stuff, and as always, I'm excited to see you in the next video.